My pleasure.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do we make this a success for you and your listeners? At this stage of my life, I don't care about me.
Good. No, I know. Well, you got to care about you because I find you. With the research. I read two of the books. I read Just Listen, and I read Talking to Crazy, which I thought had a lot to do with like what I do. And I found, and your history of what you have done is just really amazing. I found you very. I just think it, and I'm going to tie it in to what I do. I have a podcast called Dream, Believe, Never Give Up. And it comes from the way I brought my kids up. That I actually started this project as an idea with Disney to do a movie called Dream Believe. And I'm working on a children's book with them right now called Dream, Believe, Never Give Up that we hope will turn into a movie. So in the meantime, I go, well, I'm telling this story about bringing up my kids. And
I'm
it was
going to
all
get
about,
some. Keep talking. I'm going to get some water. Go ahead.
good, good. And while I was doing this other project, I said to myself, why don't I do a podcast and help other people do what I did with myself and my kids? Like I always followed my dream and very fortunate enough to, I was always, I'm a risk taker and I want to talk about with you and people's psychology of this whole thing, but like what entrepreneurs are kind of like. But I brought my kids up to dream, believe, and never give up. Right? I'd write it on their lunch pails and stuff like that, and always, and they watched me reinvent myself several times. I lived on Cape Cod, and I brought them up in a house built in 1860 in Yarmouthport, and one son, his dream was to go to Harvard. Even though they held him back twice in school, he did it, and he graduated Harvard, was accepted and graduated, and was captain of the polo team. So during the time of like him, telling people were telling him he wasn't smart. I said, Sean, you have to just work harder, and you'll do it, and you'll do it. And sure enough, he ended up graduating high school, top of his class, and getting into Harvard, and my other son is a pediatric surgeon for oncology kids in Portland, Oregon. All cancer patients, all children that are very sick. My son, Patrick, he went to undergraduate Northeastern, UMass Med, and then on to his internship in Rhode Island at Hasbro Children's Hospital. And now he works for Duschenbacher Hospital out in Portland, Oregon. So I have these two kids and I told this story to an accountant, right? And he told someone at Disney. That's how this all got started 2 years ago. And there was a production company here in Orlando. That's why I moved to Orlando, because they're here. And the guy named Dominic Carolla, who premised Entertainment, he's Emmy Award-winning producer and animator for Disney, and he's working on this children's book with me, Dream, Believe, Never Give Up. It's a story about a father bringing up these two kids in a very unorthodox way. I was very open with them. I let them know when I failed. They knew that their father chased his dreams. I've done several different things. I've been a stand-up comedian. I've sold TV shows to Fox. I owned a cookie company to start out. I quit my job and went and took a risk, and the typical entrepreneur story, almost ready to take my house. I get $1 million investment. The cookie company goes on. I sell it to Ocean Spray, and I go on. But, so I have an interesting life. I took a lot of risk. I really have no fear, which is really kind of what I want to talk about today with you, like that whole thing about entrepreneurship and no fear. And 98% of people never live their dream. This really bothers me. 90% of people live their whole life with never living a dream or a goal they had. They don't even try. That bothers me. Like that's something like that. I did it. My bucket list is full. I'm 64 years old. This is my kind of coming home project. This is like my whole thing. This is like everything I've done in my life. Now I get to share with other people and help other people take that step, because that's what's so, and my whole show is not about telling you how to be successful and what the thing is afterwards. My whole show is take the step into the arena. Like, even if you don't do it, even if you don't succeed, the feeling you're going to get by just trying and what's going to happen to you that's going to change you is amazing. So my thing is, like I always say, if you always wanted to play violin and you're 55 years old, take violin lessons. I'm not saying you're going to get to Carnegie Hall, but the feeling of playing the violin and that personal feeling that you always wanted to have, you're going to have. And no matter what else that might be, an idea for a business or whatever, I always say, take that risk in your life and you'll be happy you did. So my show is really just about stepping into the arena. After that, I don't have a plan of 7 steps to be successful and like there's a guy named Johnny Lee Dumas who I just interviewed recently. He's very successful on the internet. He is Entrepreneurs on Fire. I don't know if you're familiar with his show or not, but he gets 100 million listeners a month, something like some crazy amount. So, and he has a plan for people. So when we met, it was like, well, I get them in the arena and then you take them from there. It was really kind of funny. He goes, I don't really tell you afterwards what to do. I just say, do it. And I encourage people to just try. So that's my show, is Dream, Believe, Never Give Up. And it's dream and never and believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And the never give up part is really important. From your career that, and this is what I love about you personally being on the show with me today, is that what it's like to go through, to work hard, to be successful and take risks. And you've dealt with so many people that, your resume, you actually recommend and help companies and people become successful or be successful. And so what that's all about. So that's my story for this. And so having you on today is like the psychology of what it is to believe in yourself, what it is to follow your dream. Okay, what that is, like, to believe in yourself, and then to never give up. And you and I both know most successful entrepreneurs have those. Like, I interview them all day long on this show who say, they were taking my garbage cans. I had no money. I was, and they just kept going. And me too. That's a lot of them. Most people have that story. Of like they, lose risk.
So your listeners are current entrepreneurs,
Sure.
Wannabe entrepreneurs.
Yes, people that want to hear about following their dream or someone else's dream. Like, we have people on that are successful, that, or anyway, even a regular guy, we have on that just left his job and started something new. So I have people that are interested in hearing about how to follow their own dream and believe in themselves and never give up. So
let me run something by you. I'm so glad to be here with you. A person who's become a very close friend reached out to me 2.5 years ago, a year after his 14-year-old son killed himself. And he's a serial entrepreneur. His name is Jason Reed.
Okay.
And he felt like it was his fault. He did a Goalcast video. Goalcast often has millions and millions of viewers. His episode has 9 million views. And he spoke to a dozen male founder entrepreneurs about how he thought it was his fault.
Really?
And so he talks about that. And then he turns it over to me, so I can send you a link to something called Teen Mental Health Webinar, which is his Goalcast video, and then me talking. If you're a parent and you're worried about a teenager,
right? Yeah.
And he and I are doing presentations to EO. We're doing one to lie. We always get 10s because he tells his story and how he thinks it was his fault. And if you're worried about your teenager, I tell you about how do you get through to him.
Right.
And we're doing a live one to 500 EO members in October. And on September 22nd, we're doing a global Zoom call to all of YPO.
Wow, that's fantastic. I read some of the stuff that you're doing. Yeah, it's amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's awesome.
But here's the spin that I'm going to say is, being an alpha energy is great. And there's and most entrepreneurs are alphas. Okay. One of the things that I'm seeing, though, and this is my concern because, I was a suicide specialist for 25 years. None of my patients killed themselves.
Yeah.
Is I think what's happened in the world is that alpha energy, and a lot of women have it. I'm a Marshall Goldsmith 100 coach.
I was going to mention that. Yeah. That's
and there's
fantastic.
Lots of, all the women coaches, everybody in that group is an alpha. I mean, they go for it, and they're the best coaches in the world. But one of the concerns I have, if you have alpha energy, is you're not very good with emotional intimacy because it's all about solving problems.
Yeah.
And also, you're not very patient with a teenager who's really struggling with emotional or psychological issues, and you throw solutions at them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You throw
Yeah.
your hands up, sometimes say to your spouse, look, you know, you know, he can do whatever he wants to do. He doesn't want to do anything, so he'll end up such and such. I'm gonna go pay attention to my business. But the problem is alpha energy, there's a downside to it.
Okay.
Because you can cause a partner or spouse to feel deeply lonely.
Right. Yeah. 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 Hold on. We got a connection here. We lost you for a minute.
With alpha energy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, for most of my life as a therapist, I was empathic. So I would tune into people's feelings, and I would tune into suicidal people's suicidality.
Right.
Whereas everybody else was throwing treatments at them. Do this, do this, do that. And what would happen is the treatments wouldn't work.
Right.
So I had to get next to them
Right.
in the dark night of the soul. And when I got next to them and they were only in the dark night of the soul alone,
Right.
they just started to cry because all they'd ever been there was they were alone. But now that I've become entrepreneurial in some ways, still the best part of me is when I'm helping a parent now, because I'm licensed, but I'm retired.
Yeah.
But when I'm helping a parent, try this with your kid that you can't get through to.
Right.
And so I'm doing that. And we're still going to all of YPO, but I want to bring that up because there's a downside to alpha energy.
Interesting. Yeah, sure. I got you. Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. I am that person.
And I think, if you're an alpha, because I know a lot of alphas, what happens is if they're married to someone who's emotionally a little bit, I wouldn't say needy, they're just not alphas. Yeah. Often those marriages end. You can marry another alpha and that's fine.
Right.
But if you have children that need patience that neither of you have,
right.
That's when you hire a nanny. That's when you hire someone to be there emotionally close to them because you're both problem solvers. What are you going to do? 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 Yeah. And inside, those kids are enraged.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. It's so true. Yeah.
And so we can talk about that, which is different, or we can talk about what do you think gets in the way of people dreaming, whatever the three things are, and we can unlock that. I can go anywhere you want with this.
I think that's really interesting, and it makes me think, and it's interesting, like because I brought up two boys that I was very close to them. People ask me how my boys became successful, and I say I just loved them a lot. I just gave them a lot of love. I really didn't guide them. I really didn't make them become a doctor or talk about it or say, don't forget, you're going to be a doctor. I never mentioned it. I never mentioned Harvard. Actually, Sean almost didn't get in. Brown accepted him and Stanford accepted him, and everybody, he didn't get in Harvard until the end. It was last minute, and we all went crazy when he got in because that was his dream. That was it. And he worked so hard. Actually, I was living in LA at the time, and the counselor were calling from school and said, we have to send him home. He works 24 hours a day to get to Harvard. He's working 20. He have to say he falls asleep in school. We have to drive him home. I never knew this. I was like, oh my God, But they said so it's interesting. So he worked so hard to get to that goal with no pressure from me. I never. I didn't say he had to go to Harvard, but that was his goal, and he had to get there. And my other son was the same way. He worked really. I lived in Boston where both of my school kids were in school at one time, and my son Patrick was a doctor.
I grew up in Boston. Where'd you grow up?
I lived in Longfellow Place downtown with the big tall building, down by the, and then I lived in the North End for a while on I forget what street it was where the firehouse is there, but yeah. So I lived.
What was the great pizza? What was the great pizza place in the North End?
God, they couldn't get in there.
Everybody went there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it.
It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. Anyways, I love the North End. I love Mike's Pastry. Come on, you can't beat Mike's Pastry though. So yeah, I do. Haymarket was there. Haymarket Square, yeah, I loved it. Like I said, I spent time when both my kids were in school. I spent time living in Boston while they were both there. I thought I was going to college again. I was never I was like the kid for them growing up. But I was an entrepreneur, and that's kind of how I ended up in this position today. Talking to you is that I was been very happy. I've not, been overly successful. I just always did well at everything I tried, and not like crazy well, but just, and that's what I try to preach to people is that just do it if you really wanted to. Always try to do it. And what I thought was so interesting about
So where's mom in this whole formula?
Mom's great. We got divorced, maybe 10 years ago, best friends. We were more partners than, the other thing. We were good together as partners. Like we were good in business together, and she supported me in whatever I wanted to do, because here I'm traveling around the country selling cookies at one point, then I'm doing stand-up comedy. Then I moved to Los Angeles to sell two TV shows to Fox that I created, never had any experience in that at all. I'd never been in a comedy club when I started stand-up, and I ended up making six figures doing stand-up 3 years later. So I went from zero. And I love that about what I do and what I tell other people, that you can, if you really want to do it, you can do it. Like you can do it if you really want to.
Okay. So when we do this, because I'm a therapist, by nature, the tempo of my voice, you're at the red line. I can't keep up with you, but
that's okay.
But but I come from it's a different tempo. So
I know. Because what I really would like from this interview is that I want you to clinically talk about people following their dreams and believing in themselves. Like what was it? What part of the personality does it take to believe in yourself? Like overall, over anything else. Like people tell you can't do that. You can't never do that, George. You can't do that. But and for anybody doing something, everyone always says,
oh yeah, because I've been doing interviews all day long.
Okay.
Shall we start?
Yeah, we're actually going. We've already been taping. We're already interviewing. We're gonna
You'll edit it. Yeah,
we'll edit it down. So we're looking kind of at like the science behind insecurity. Like what is it behind people that are afraid to I'm interested myself, this is why I thought having you with all the experience you have and what you do, and I could read your bio, and I'm going to when we do the opening for this, because I think it's really important that people know who you really are and what you've done, because your success is just amazing. I'm going to tell you something. It's amazing. It's an honor to have you on because of what I'm trying to help people do. So now I'm going like through the back door. I'm like saying, instead of having somebody on today that just talks about how successful their business was and how they started from nothing. Now I'm saying, let's talk about the psychology of dream, believe, never give up. Let's talk about having a dream, and so having a goal, and then taking the chance, stepping over that line. We call it step into the arena on the show, and then believing in yourself enough when people say, you can't do that. What do you know about drawing, or what do you know about whatever you're going to do? And then never give up. I think that the key is never give up. I asked some very successful. Go ahead. I asked some very successful people. Go ahead. 1 minute. Go ahead. I'm sorry. We're on a little bit of a delay, so I'm sorry.
So here's a quote that you're going to use as an excerpt. I can tell you already. So write this down. If you're listening to both of us, write this down.
Yep.
When someone says no to you, it doesn't mean you're wrong, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means they won't help you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Remember that. And part of the reason they're doing it, they may even love you, is you make them nervous. You make them nervous because those are people who have given up on their dreams. Those are people who sold out their future and their possibilities. So they're trying to reinforce to themselves that they didn't miss out on something that they missed out on. And so when they say no to you, right, it's because you're making them nervous about what they never got to do. And how is it that people get to believe in themselves? Can I go on our roll here?
Yeah, please go. Let's go. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
So I'm a psychiatrist, and actually I invented something called surgical empathy, which is something I used with suicidal people for 25 years, and none of them died by suicide. But I learned a lot about how people grow up, how they become strong, how they become weak, some fall apart and some don't. And what happens, if you can imagine this, when we're born, we're actually born kind of complete, except when we go out in the world, it's not going to deliver everything we want, like what happened in mom's womb. And so what happens is we're not able to communicate to mom, usually mom at the beginning, what we need, and we cry and we have tantrums, and when we're hungry, when we need to be changed. And there's 4 ways that parents can respond to us as infants and toddlers. And the 4 ways are: they can spoil us by coddling us. Mm-hmm. They can be critical of us, shaming us, telling us we're wrong or stupid. They can ignore us because they're preoccupied, and then you have to do everything on your own. But the best that they can be, and this is what George has been with his kids, is they can be a loving teacher, mentor, coach. Loving teacher, mentor, coach. So one of my best examples of that, even though he's gotten mixed press, there's an anecdote that I love to tell about Tiger Woods.
Okay.
In because what he had with his dad, now granted their relationship, had its ups and downs, and you can see that in the documentary, which I'd recommend everybody watching. But what happened is his dad saw a real talent in him. His dad was really a loving teacher, mentor, coach. He may not have been all that loving because he was so driven, because he saw that Tiger could be the best that ever was. But because Tiger got that as a response from his dad, the anecdote I give is the 1997 Masters tournament. His Masters, he played as an amateur. He shoots 40 on the front 9, which is 2 or 3 over. He comes to his dad and he basically says, I don't know what's going on. The wheels are coming off. And his dad simply said to him, you've been here 1,000 times. Just do what you need to do. And Tiger goes out and shoots 18 under par for the remainder of the tournament, which means he was probably 22 under par, given he started out with 40. What happened there? Well, what happened is when you run into a roadblock in life, and there's no way forward, you turn inward. And champion athletes and champion entrepreneurs have something called heart. And to me, what heart means is when you turn inward, even if you don't know how you're going to make it through it, you know you're going to make it through it. And when you turn inward, you've internalized a lot of the loving teacher, mentoring, coaching from a dad, from a mom, from teachers. But if what you internalized instead was you were spoiled, you were coddled, when the world doesn't treat you the same way as your coddling mom or dad does, what happens is you have tantrums. You want to be bailed out.
Right.
You tell your parents, write my college essay for me. And what happens is your kids, your parents, because they can't stand your anxiety and your tantrums, they just spoil you.
Yeah.
But they ruin you for life. And then the critical parents who shame you, what they do is you might become strong, but a lot of it's built on anger. I'll show you.
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't take much to trigger that chip on their shoulder. They can become successful, but boy, they can become vicious when they get older.
Right.
And then if your parents just left you there alone, in your diaper filled with crap, they didn't change you.
Right.
What happens is you can grow up not taking any chances, because if you take any chances, it's like going back to not being changed, not being fed, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
But I'll tell you, it's never too late to get that teacher, mentor, coach. I had parents who were not, they did the best they could, but they didn't fit into the category of you, George.
Right. Yeah.
And so what happened is I developed sort of an attitude. I could be very cynical. I could be very sarcastic.
Right.
And I think my greatest accomplishment, and you've been very kind, I guess I've accomplished a lot.
Yes.
But my greatest accomplishment is I dropped out of medical school twice and finished.
Amazing. Okay.
And I dropped out twice because I dropped out twice because I think I had untreated depression, because I hit a wall. And when I turned inside, I didn't come up with heart or courage. I came up with cratering.
Right.
And what happened is the second time in Boston, at BU Medical School, our hometown, And this is the power of how someone early in your life can just flip it around. So the second time I dropped out because my mind just wasn't working, the school wanted to kick me out because they were losing matching funds. And so I met with the head of the school, the dean, who's about fundraising. And I don't even remember the meeting, but I get a call from the dean of students, who was like that loving teacher, mentor, coach. I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
He calls me and says, "You better come in. I got a letter here from the head of the school." I go in there because I think the head of the school was worried I could do something self-destructive.
Yeah.
And so I go in there, I read the letter, and it says, "I met with Mr. Goulstone. We talked about another profession. I'm recommending to the promotions committee that he be asked to withdraw." And I said, "What does this mean?" And the dean of students, who cared about students, said, "You've been kicked out." And George, it's like I cratered. I mean, it's almost like I bent over.
Yeah, I feel it.
And I'm not a religious person.
Right.
And I felt something wet on my cheekbones, and I thought I was crying. I mean, I thought I was bleeding.
Right.
I was looking at my fingers.
Yeah.
But it was tears. But imagine this, when you come from a background that wasn't necessarily the most supportive.
Right.
He says this to me. He said, "Look, you didn't mess up because you're passing everything, but you are messed up. But if you get unmessed up, I think this school would be glad they gave you a second chance." And so I'm crying now with the feeling of compassion. This is new to me.
Yeah.
And so imagine you're cratering and you feel useless, worthless, like there's no future.
Right. Yeah.
And he says to you, this dean of students, he says, and even if you don't get unmessed up, even if you don't become a doctor, even if you don't do anything the rest of your life, I'd be proud to know you.
Okay.
Because you have a streak of goodness in you that we don't grade in medical school and that the world needs, and you won't know how much the world needs it till you're 35, but you got to be alive till you're 35. You deserve to be on this planet, and you're going to let me help you. And he stood up to the medical school. He's a PhD. He stood up to the heads of all these hospitals because he saw something in me. He saw a future in me that I didn't see, and he went to bat for me. So it flipped the switch inside me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I took another year off, and I worked at something called the Menninger Foundation, a psychiatric institution in Topeka, Kansas. It's now in Houston. But the fact that he saw a future for me that I didn't,
right,
and he went to bat for me against the school. It flipped the switch. And so I took that year off, came back, finished medical school, finished training in psychiatry at UCLA.
I'm losing the connection.
And I became the 25 years. I just did the same with all my patients that he did for me.
Really? Oh my God! That seriously.
And none of them died by suicide. I saw the future. I saw the future in my patients. And it's interesting. Can I share something that I'll get a little emotional about?
Please. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So and this year I've started a new company called Michelangelo Mindset.
I saw it. Yeah.
And it's been nominated for 2021 Breakthrough Idea Award by Thinkers 50. Thinkers 50 is the Oscars of management thinking. And what it basically means, and I help entrepreneurs, I work with accelerators, is Michelangelo looked at a piece of marble, saw the statue of David in it, and just carved until he freed the statue. And so entrepreneurs see a vision and they carve away everything until they set it free. But what I didn't realize at the time, which is just hit me in the last week, is that I didn't think I had any future. But the dean of students looked at my future like a piece of marble, and I was the David for him because I went out and was a suicide prevention specialist for 25 years. So it's just come full circle that he saw. I mean, it's kind of blown me away.
No
but
doubt.
I go out. But I go out in the world, and if you're an entrepreneur, forget about all the no's that people give you. But the key is you need to be able to see a vision clearly, a vision that the world needs, wants. They can't wait to put their hands on it. So you got to be able to see that vision clearly and taste it,
Yeah.
and not let go until you realize it. Or
Right.
if you're a serial entrepreneur like George, you
Right.
learn to pivot.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
down something. Sooner or later, if it says this is a non-starter, you've learned a lot, you pivot to something else.
Right. Yes. Yeah. 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 I love the Michelangelo analogy. I just think it's really special and beautiful. And after reading all about you, to hear this story, it really has brought me full circle with you, because I'm understanding a lot of you. I mean, I did not know that I did not read that you failed medical school and took you 2 times to go in, and that somebody mentored you. But it goes back to that whole thing of what you're doing now, and what I kind of do in my simple way, not your way, but that is to encourage people and try to mold them or help them see that they can do that too. Encourage them, right? I mean, we're encouraging people. You're encouraging people who already are trying to, to. It's like going to like the master's class. I look at it that way, of entrepreneurship with you, to have someone like you recommending or helping them guide their way. Not only
Yeah,
on,
and if you
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and if you're listening to this, so what gets in the way for a number of people is, if when you were young, instead of being fed loving teacher, mentor, coach by someone like George or Earl Woods,
Right, right,
you were fed the other thing. You were spoiled, you were criticized, you were just ignored.
yeah,
What happens is you internalize feeling hurt, afraid, and enraged. So I think a lot of people, and it's the rage. Now, sometimes the anger, anger can give you determination. You get angry at yourself. I'm going to fix this.
right,
But rage can be really destructive,
yeah,
because rather than being determined, rage causes you, I'm going to get even with someone.
right,
Whereas anger can be, I'll just show the world. You don't believe
right,
me, I'll show you.
right,
But if you've been abused or ignored or spoiled rotten,
right,
rage is really destructive. Anger can make you strong, but rage,
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
better get some work on that.
yeah,
If you're quick to rage,
right,
you're not going to be successful. One of the reasons being, if you're an entrepreneur,
right, yeah,
is when if they see anger in you, that might cause them to pull back. But when people see that you're capable of rage,
yeah,
the people around you are going to know that that's in you, and
right,
they're not going to tell you. They'd be afraid to tell you things that might upset you, because
right,
they'll be afraid that they're going to trigger the rage in you.
right,
And so you're going to fail,
right,
because you need your people to bring you things that might frustrate you. But if they're afraid that you have rage in you,
right. Right.
get that taken care of.
Yeah, yeah, and I would think rage, you lose focus. How can you keep focused on
Totally.
on the prize? And you lose your credibility when you have rage. I mean, I think people look at you and go, I don't know about working with him. He has some, he's not right. But anger, and I have. It's funny. I go more for anger because I frustrated. Like, I'm going to get that to happen for me. Like, I have stories of my entrepreneurship, which are nuts. When I wanted to get my cookies into the Olympics back in the '90s, here I was from Cape Cod Cookie Company, and Aramark had the contract at the time for the for the stadium in Atlanta, and they said no on the phone. They said no, we already picked the products, and I flew to Philadelphia, where they headquarter. I stayed in the Marriott. I called the girl who was a secretary to the president of the company, and I said, "I'm here. Oh my God, George, you're here. He's not going to see you. They already decided on the products for the Olympics." I said, "Well, Gloria, I'm staying here until I see him." I called the next day. She called me. Are you gone? Like, I'm there like 4 days. Betsy's saying, come home. They're not going to see you. Day 5, I get a phone call. He'll see you. Get here now. I ran like Rocky down the street to Aramark with a box of cookies under my arm. I ended up realizing that I was talking to the president of the company. I didn't realize. I thought it was somebody under. He was in the suite at the top. The elevator opens. There's 2 secretaries, the vice president, the president. She's there. She's scared. She goes, George, I got you a meeting, but he's going to really be mean to you. He's not going to be happy. He thinks you're crazy, like you've been here 5 days. I went in, sat down in front of him. He goes, what do you want to do? What do you want? do you run? Do you jump? That's what he said to me. Like, what do you do? I said, I want to be in the Olympics. He goes, what do you do? What do you run? I said, no, my cookie. I want my cookies. And he goes, well, what are you talking about? And then I said, you tell me right now, what is one of the Native American fruits to this country? He's looking at me like, I don't know. I said, cranberries. What better cookie to serve people around the world than a Native American fruit? He looked at me. He ate the cookie. He says, we're going downstairs. Went downstairs to a conference room. They put 20 people in there. I had cookies in every venue at the Atlanta Olympics. But that's that crazy part of, what we just talked about, like not anger. That's anger to say, I'm going to do it. And you go do it. It wasn't coming from rage. It was like determination and risk taking, I guess. But, just, people calling, come home. What are you doing? It's your day free. You're in the Marriott in Philadelphia by yourself. I said, no, I'm going to see that guy. And, so that's how it turned out.
If you're watching the show right now or listening to the show, you need to see the documentary. I think it's called Inventing David Geffen.
Okay. Yeah.
Because if you watch it, you are David Geffen. It talks about his music career, and he was unstoppable. He was unrelenting. And so, and you're a great role model for being unstoppable. For people who aren't like a force of nature like you, but you triggered an anecdote that I have to share, which is a little under the red line. You're at the red line, full blown, George. I love your energy.
I know.
But I was fortunate to have all these wonderful mentors. And so after that first mentor in med school helped me, and my last one was Larry King, and my mentor before him was a guy named Warren Bennis, big leadership guy.
Yeah.
And one of my other mentors was a guy named Walter Dunn. And Walter Dunn worked for Coca-Cola, and he got Coca-Cola into Major League Baseball, into the NBA and whatever. But he gave me this great story that's in one of my books. I think the book is called Get Out of Your Own Way. And he said to me, he said, until you get no for an answer, you're not asking for enough.
Right. Yeah. I love it. I say, yeah.
Oh, and here's the story about how he got Coke into the biggest movie chain. And he, like you, he was just so darn likable. Even if people were frustrated, he was just so likable. You had to hear him out. You're so likable. It's crazy. So he's speaking to the head of this big movie chain. And his advice is always take the conversation to a no, because this is what you do. So he's talking to the person, and then the person finally says, Walter, we've decided to go with Pepsi. And Walter says, why? He says, well, something you didn't ask me about is that we're redesigning all the lobbies in our theaters, and Pepsi is going to underwrite all that renovation. And Walter said, Coke can do that. And the guy said, good, we'll go with you. So
I love it.
So the idea is you push it for no, and see, a lot of people get scared that someone's going to say no. But if you can handle no with such class and poise and not anger.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was great advice, because a lot of people are afraid to say no to you because they think you're going to go, pardon my French, ape shit on them. But when you don't do that and you say, what led to the no, that if we did something different, it would be a yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought that was just so brilliant.
Yeah. I have a plaque that says no is yes. No means yes. That's how I live my life. So no means yes. So somebody says no, that really means yes. Eventually they're going to say yes. It just means no now. But that's it. So I no means yes. And the likability thing is really funny. When I was in LA pitching my shows that I wrote, people would say they're not looking at buying the show, but they want to see the presentation. They want to meet you. They're not going to. So I'd go to whoever it was, NBC, and 20 people in a room. I knew they weren't going to buy the show, but my agent would say, just want to meet you. They want to see this pitch. Like the pitch was so interesting, and everything I write is based on a true story, so it's always like something from my heart. And this was a story about my grandfather and this and that, so it was really just the way I did the presentation, and then I would hand around at the end of the presentation. What's special?
One thing.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's special about you, George, is people love people who are bold, but who aren't brazen and a-holes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you don't want to be an a-hole and arrogant. So you're not arrogant, you're just unrelenting. And people look at that and they're so envious. They don't care what you're selling because they all want to be unrelenting but likable like you.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. It is. It is. It is. It is. And the trick, I guess, the trick is, because I don't want to keep you too long. I know you got a lot of interviews, but the trick is how do we get people to become more like that? Like, let's say when I'm talking to people on my show, and trying to encourage them to be me, not be me, but to do like what I do, or what do you think is just like an overview of what that's about? So like, let's look at like what I'm doing. I do a show called Dream, Believe, Never Give Up. Want people to step into the arena, and here I am, this guy, and it's really interesting that we're having this conversation because it's like we're doing a little psychoanalysis of George, which is fine. I like it.
Okay. So
how do I get that message?
So I've got
go.
Okay. So now this would be like downshifting in a Porsche, because when you accelerate, but you don't go off the cliff. That's what I like about you. You downshift. So when you're trying to get someone to do that, and you're getting pushback, you're getting excuses. So this is your script, but you got to own it, and you say to them, "What's holding you back?" But you have to say it, like in George's tone of voice. Me, I could say, "Oh, what's holding you back?" But you're going to say, "Hey," you go, "So what's holding you back?" They say whatever it is, and this is what you say. Yeah, I understand that, but what's really going on? They tell you that, and then you give them a second really, because I understand that too, but what's really going on? You give them, what's holding you back to what's really is going on, and then they will open up about what's really going on, and you allow them to sort of express that. Oh, I'm afraid of being a failure like my dad. I'm afraid they're going to reject me. I'm afraid my spouse is going to leave me. But the point is, you want to air it out.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what a loving, that's the loving
yes
dad you were.
Yeah.
Is that they probably felt safe with you, but see, surgical empathy, which I used with suicidal patients, opened people up. And the person I learned it from, you like this story.
Here you go.
I'm close friends with a general from the Marines who was the COO of the Marines in the 90s. And he was the first CEO of the U.S. Intrepid aircraft carrier on the Hudson. And he and I worked on a transition program for returning Marines from 2006 to 2008. And then the floor fell out. And he taught me the 5 reallys. That's what I'm giving you a taste of.
Okay.
And his name was General Marty Steele. And I said, Marty, what was that about? He said, when we help Marines with a transition, we call each other Marine. And we said, they would say, well, I'd say, what's going on, Marine? And they'd say, well, it's quite different to go from active duty to civilian life. And he'd say, yeah, I understand it's a transition. What's really going on? And they'd say, well, it's different to be in a war zone than a civilian thing. And yeah, but what's really going on? Well, my spouse and I were arguing. He said, when you get the 5th really, he said, Marines would say to him, I saw and did horrible things, sir. And when I close my eyes, I see them vividly, so I don't close my eyes much, sir. So one of the things that he did, so when you get to the bottom line, really,
right? Yeah.
What he basically did is he gave them an order to put it aside. So I have something called the Dead Mentor Society, 8 mentors, all the way going back to that guy in medical school. The last one was Larry King. Yeah. And so what happens is when I run into a roadblock or when I'm, frustrated with myself, I'll wake up one of my dead mentors. So I do a lot of podcasts, and sometimes afterwards I'm critical of myself. So lately I've been waking up Larry King because he just died.
Yeah.
And I say, Larry. And he says in his Brooklyn accent, what, Mark? I said, I did it again. What? I was on a podcast. He said, you're always on podcasts. I'm not even cold yet, Mark. What's going on? And I said, I did it again. I started a story. I got lost in the story. I didn't finish it. He said, yes. So I said, well, I said there were 5 points that people need to remember. And I mentioned 2 points. He said, so what'd the host think? Well, the host wants me back again. And he says, Mark, Put a sock in it, okay? Let me go RIP. I'm not even cold yet. Leave me alone. Give me a break here.
I love it. I love it. The Dead Mentor Society. I love it. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love. I think it's amazing. It's I have that is I don't know what else to say after that. That's just so profound. You know what I mean? That's so profound to think like that and to be able to think
Say,
inside.
hey, Larry, I shut George up. You know how tough it's still to shut George up?
Yeah.
Larry would say, see, I told you already. Let me go back, RIP. Leave me alone. Go back to Nate and Al's and have some lunch and bagels on me.
I love it. I tell you that I don't know. I don't know where. I don't think we can go any farther than that. I think that's just fantastic. That we have just what we've covered is just really beautiful too. I have I've fully enjoyed this interview. I really have. I got to tell you something. I really have. It's opened me up too. I've learned some things by this interview, and I can take with myself to move on, to go, to enjoy more and be better. I have enjoyed this. I got more out of this than I ever expected. I got to tell you something. I really did. So I really have enjoyed meeting you, listening, and I want to do it again. So I would love to have an opportunity for us to sit down and have another talk 6 months from now and see where George is with this podcast and see where everybody is. I've enjoyed following.
Hey, Larry, George, Larry, George liked me. He liked me.
I love it.
Look, Mark, people like you. You're not Sally Field. Give it a break already, okay? Let me go back. Let me go RIP.
Hey, you were just on a podcast where it gets 20 million views a week. Oh my God. That's fantastic. That's really awesome. That's like, I mean, your career, following your career and what you're doing now is just amazing. I really have enjoyed. I mean, you give back, you have the heal the world, one conversation at a time. I mean, you use all of your experience to help others. I mean, come on.
So I'm gonna shift because I want you and I and people listening in. We're gonna save some lives right now because as I mentioned, there's someone who reached out to me. His 14-year-old son died by suicide. And if you're worried about a teenager, and if you're an entrepreneur and you have 3 kids, there's likely to be one kid who's not with the program.
Yeah.
And the more you stay on that kid's back, the worse it gets. And your spouse is worried because they're going into a bad place. So here's a script if you're worried about one of your kids. And what you do, and this is actually the script, you do this while you're doing an activity together. They don't like these heart-to-heart conversations unless they start them themselves. And so while you're driving somewhere or you're doing something, you'd say, hey, can I ask you a few things? Because most of us parents are worried about our kids with COVID and all this stuff. Hopefully he or she will say, okay, what is it? And then you say this to them, at the worst it can be, how awful are you capable of feeling about your life for yourself? They're going to say, what? At the worst that it can be, how awful are you capable of feeling about your life for yourself? Now, this is the kid you're worried about. Right. They're going to say pretty awful. And then you're going to go surgical empathy. You're going to say, pretty awful or very awful? Okay, Dad. Okay, Mom. Very awful. Second prompt. And when you're feeling that way, how alone do you feel with it? Pretty alone. Pretty alone or all alone? Okay, already, all alone. And then the third thing is, take me to the last time you felt it. And they'll talk about, not being able to get to sleep. It's 2:30 in the morning. Maybe they didn't know whether to put their head or their hand through the wall. Right. Yeah. And you let them talk it out and you don't give them solutions. Then the next thing you say to them is, because they're opening up to you like they've never opened up. And you say, look at me. And you look at them with all the emotion and tears in your life, because if they kill themselves, your life is over. Right. And you look at them and you say, I got a favor to ask you. And they're going to say, what? You could say, the next time you're feeling that way, or even going down that path, you do whatever it takes to get your mom or my undivided attention. because we don't want you to be, and I don't want you to be there all alone. Do you understand me?
Yeah. Wow. That's you got it.
And those 4 prompts, if people are listening in,
Yes.
that's going to save a life from this broadcast.
I love it. That's a gift. That is a gift. I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for this interview. And we're going to leave it there because that's the most important part of everything we talked about. It is. It is. So thank you very much for spending this time with me. And I hope to see you again and have another conversation.
I look forward to that. And is this video also?
Yeah. Yeah. We're yeah.
Yeah. So if it's video, I just put a QR code. Here's something cute. If you see it on video, that'll take you to my LinkedIn profile. It's not going to take you to a restaurant.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay. Yeah.
But it'll take you to my LinkedIn profile. Please reach out. You can check out my podcast, my wake up call. Yeah. George will be a guest on that down the road. Great. And or check out Michelangelo Mindset or my just do a search for me. You'll find a bunch of stuff.
I would love it. Yeah. And I'd love if you would share this interview on your social media too. You know, what we just talked about with what you do. I'd really be great. You know, I would appreciate it. This is a special interview. This is a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George.
Really nice meeting you. Let's stay in touch. Okay. And have a great day.
Absolutely.
You're in LA, right? You're in Los Angeles? Yeah. Yeah. I lived in Marina Del Rey for 5 years. Yeah, when I was out doing my crazy LA stuff. But yeah.
And by the way, if you're a millennial listening in, you won't remember that I've trained hostage negotiators, that I'm the suicide expert, that I was in the O.J. Simpson trial. You won't remember any of that stuff. What you'll remember is they filmed the movie Superbad in my house.
I love it. Really? Why? How? Why?
Because location companies are looking for it. And I joined this thing called Clubhouse. Yeah. And I put up a picture of one of the characters. McLovin is on our bed. Next to him is Seth Rogen and Bill Hader at the end of the movie. I put this up at Clubhouse and people say, you better take that down. It looks like you're a child molester. I took the picture down. But the last 15 minutes of the movie is my house.
I love it. That's awesome, Mark. Dr. Mark, thank you so much. Please, let's talk again. I love it. Thank you very much. Stay in touch, okay? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Great.